Moving on to the penultimate motion. Okay, let's move on. The 11th motion for this evening. Capital punishment should be banned. And for the motion, I call upon Prime Minister Adrian to speak for 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Addy. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have a very pressing issue on our hand right now. Capital punishment should be banned. We are talking about people who are being killed to death and tortured to death. And this is something that we cannot stand for. First of all, capital punishment is outdated. This is a law that was put in many years ago in a different society, a different period, and a different time. There are many examples of stuff that happened like this. For example, sacrificing people. It used to be very common in olden days to sacrifice people for the gods and appease them. We don't do that anymore. Why? Because that's outdated. Spanking children. People don't do that as much anymore. Why? It's outdated. There was a rule called the thumb rule where if a father or a husband was allowed to hit the wife if as long as the object wasn't bigger than a thumb. We don't do that anymore because it's outdated. Even women's right to vote is outdated. The next issue is the inhumanity. Because this is torturing a person. It's very violent behavior. And people think it's a quick fix to everything. A life is something that is very precious and should be looked after and nurtured. My final point here is that people should have a chance to reform. You got to look at the psychology aspects of this. There are psychologists and psychiatrists and many good therapists who can provide counseling and help and assistance. And through therapy, going to rehab, fitting into society, going, even something like an organization like John Howard Society. What they do is they actually help people get out from the jail cells and into the real world. We should be talking not about punishing people, but actually reforming them. Please vote for the motion.
Thanks, Adrian. To speak against the motion, please welcome Heather for 3 minutes.
I'm going to have to wing this. And I have a confession. I thought I was the Prime Minister in this debate. Let's... Ladies and gentlemen, Honourable Prime Minister, I would like to propose that the government's motion should not be supported today. That in fact capital punishment should not be banned, but rather it should be reinstated in our society. There are 3 reasons. I think one is because it's a gross violation of the social contract. The second reason is cost. And the third reason is the safety and protection of society after a gross moral violation has been committed. Now, the Prime Minister talked about outdated sacrificial killings and how we shouldn't do that. Well, a lot of the people who commit murder are actually believe they're making a sacrifice to the gods. But I'm going to give you that point. But then you talked about spanking being outdated. Well, there's certain types of spanking that probably should be reinstated because I thought I was going to lose my hearing at the mall earlier today. Because these kids are running around screaming and their parents have an uptick in their voice and they're asking them 5 things, making them choose. The kids are overwhelmed. It's past their bedtime. They haven't eaten. They're in hot coats inside a hot mall. And they say, okay, well, maybe you shouldn't be so loud, okay? So, I mean, really, I think if you're going to use that argument, let's get level-headed about this and think maybe in some circumstances a spanking on the derriere lightly as a gesture of who's in charge here would not be a bad thing. We all survived our parents' atrocities, and if you're English, the wooden spoon and the English backhander, but that's another point, I digress. Really? Now we talk about outdated. You mentioned, the Prime Minister mentioned that wife beating is outdated. Really? What is the issue with wife beating is it actually goes unpunished. It goes unpunished, and there are thousands of women who are actually victims of domestic abuse, and they're not taken seriously in the courts. So I would argue that, in fact, that we should treat capital punishment the same way. That we should have, if there is a trial by jury, and we're not talking about circumstantial evidence, we're talking about unequivocal evidence, there is no question, then do we really want to spend like $117,000 a year, which I believe it costs to keep someone incarcerated? One of the worst murderers, our Canadian in cold blood, was a guy in the Shell Lake murders in 1967. He killed a family of 9. He spared one 4-year-old because he didn't see her, but then later said she had the face of an angel. The guy lived until 2004. It cost us, if you do the math, over $4 million to keep this man who could not be rehabilitated. That's the entire budget deficit of Ontario. We could wipe it out with 125 of these guys. So let's be sensible, people. Defeat the motion.
Whoa. I'm kind of shivering here. Anyways, I call back Prime Minister for 1 minute for rebuttal and summation.
Thank you, Addy. So in terms of spanking children, today, there was a time when you could go and, the kid misbehaved in the place, you could spank your kid or discipline him in public. Nowadays, if you do it, you're the person who's wrong. And it's sort of become less common to spank kids in public. I don't think murder is the same as sacrificing. I don't think they're really doing it to sacrifice is the issue with them. They have mental health issues. They have many other issues that they have. In terms of what I was saying about the thumb rule it was allowed you were allowed to beat up your wife as long as the object wasn't bigger than a thumb, and that is not allowed anymore. It isn't allowed to be abusive like that. And what we have to watch out for is some of these things. We are talking to not just about the economics, but there is a lot of, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Okay. So, capital punishment should be banned. People for the motion, please raise your hand. 6. Okay. People against the motion, please raise your hand. 11. Okay. 6 against 11. The motion is defeated. Capital punishment should not be banned. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Adrian. Thanks, Hazel. Thanks.